All right. Well, um, yeah. So the next thing I guess I wanted to address was the rebuttal speech of Richard Dawkins. Now, he made the comment that um, religious people are using an ignorance of knowledge to um, a God of gaps argument. In other words, we don't know what caused the Big Bang, so let's say God did it, and we don't know what caused the design of the world, let's say God did it, etc. Well, I think this is a misunderstanding, and it's kind of frustrating that people, uh, like thousands and thousands of times before Richard Dawkins got up to speak, have pointed this out, but yet people keep making the misconstrual. A God of the gaps fallacy is when you say science has not yet explained this phenomenon of nature, so we'll assume that the explanation is that there is no natural explanation but a direct act of God. So therefore God exists. That is a fallacious way of arguing, because as science progresses, it will come up with natural explanations. Well, the first thing is, why can't God use natural explanations? In other words, for example, to go back to the evolution argument that he gave in his opening speech, just because we can explain how speciation occurred to its present state with natural laws does not mean that God is not involved. So a natural explanation is very different from only a natural explanation. The second point is, in the case of the Big Bang, science in principle cannot explain. Uh, it's impossible that no matter how far science advances, science will never be able to explain the cause of the Big Bang. Why? Because the Big Bang is the first event in a scientific investigation. Science, in principle, studies natural phenomena which take place within the physical universe. If there is something outside of the physical universe, a supernatural deity, that is beyond the ken of science. Science can only deal with space-time. The Big Bang singularity is the boundary of space-time. So there is no way to get beyond the boundary. As Stephen Hawking is fond of saying, you can't go south of the South Pole or north of the North Pole. So this argument, if you want to call it that, of Dawkins, that we don't know yet, but physicists are trying to study this and trying to figure it out, that is hogwash. Okay, science begins at the Big Bang. Okay, you can't in principle go before t sub naught, the moment of the Big Bang. Maybe someday we'll be able to get beyond the Planck time, but we can't go beyond the beginning of time. We can't examine scientifically before the beginning of scientific, scientifically investigatable uh, phenomena. So no, it's impossible. Science cannot say what caused the Big Bang. So when Dawkins says this is a God of the gaps, what other gap can you put in here? What other entity can you put in this gap than God? You can't put a natural entity in there because nature isn't around yet. It has to be it just has to be a supernatural entity because there is no natural entities uh, causing the Big Bang. Natural entities start at the Big Bang. Um, so it's a caricature to say that this is God of the gaps. So it's not what we don't know about science, it's what we do know. We do know that science cannot place a natural entity as the cause of the Big Bang. We are 100% undeniably certain of this. Okay, it's not a lack of scientific knowledge, it's the presence of scientific knowledge. And the third thing I'd like to point out about this comment of Dawkins is that it's an argument from silence or an argument from ignorance. He's saying we don't know what the cause is, but someday we will know through science. We'll figure it out. Well, that is not an argument. That's an admission that he does not have an argument. So you can't prove what you're trying to argue for, a particular proposition, by saying, well, I don't have a proof now, but 300 years down the road, a scientist is going to find out. No, we live now, not 300 years from now. We have to deal with what is available to us now, not what we hope will be available to us later. So he's admitting that he does not have an explanation for the Big Bang. Now, the next thing he says that I would like to draw your attention to, I don't recall if this was in his closing speech or in his, I believe this was in his rebuttal. He said that to say we don't know, so let's just say for the heck of it that it's God, to explain this question that we have about a phenomenon of nature. He says that's lazy. It's something that we don't. We're just sitting back on the couch, not really thinking. We just say God did it, and then move on to the next question. Well, this is after William Lane Craig's speech, where he gave 10, not 1.5, not 2, 10 arguments for the existence of God. So, and then the main argument on the theist side is that we need to have God in order to explain or to predict meaning in our lives, purpose in our lives. I don't understand this man. Okay, I do not understand how somebody could be this dense and have a PhD in science, and teach at Cambridge, or I don't remember if it's Cambridge or Oxford. I think it's Cambridge. To posit God is to use our minds. Okay, we have 10 arguments at least for the existence of God. That makes at least one prediction that science, by Dawkins' own admission, cannot make. That there will be meaning in the lives of human beings. So yeah, it's just I don't know if he's like intentionally trying to just I'm flabbergasted by some of the things that Dawkins says from time to time. All right, so the the only argument that he gave for atheism is we know that evolution is true through scientific investigation. That's it. Now, another thing he said, actually in his opening speech, is that why questions, science tells us what is the case, but why is something the case? Those kind of questions are silly. That was the word he used, quoting, I think, Peter Atkins. But he quoted somebody who said that, and he agreed with it by implication. Well, then Dr. Craig said, well, no, why questions are the most important questions to us. Well, then Dawkins gets up and clarifies that when he said that they're silly, it's silly not because they're not important, but because they are meaningless. The analogy he gives is, what is the color of jealousy? That's a silly question because it's meaningless. But notice what he does not do at any point. He does not explain why the why questions are silly. He gives no argument. He gives no proof. It's as though he just refuses to consider the questions or any answers that may be posed to them. But yet he's accusing us, people such as myself, of being lazy and not being willing to think about important questions and the answers to them, and so on. So it's just one major gaffe after another with this guy. He's got to get a different speechwriter or something. All right, so yeah, we can ask why we think there is no meaning in life, which he would say that there is no meaning in life. So what is wrong with why questions? You can't just arbitrarily assume in a debate that what your opponent is saying is meaningless or false. You have to give an argument. That's the whole point of a debate. Not just to assert, well, I think that my opponent is a fool, because only a fool would believe that. Why? Why would a fool believe that? Oh, that's right, we're not allowed to ask why questions. Why? We're just not. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. During Craig's rebuttal speech, I thought it was very astute of him to point out that the technique of the skeptical side was to kind of shift from trying to give arguments to using kind of a sleight of hand sort of rhetoric, where they will say, well, we have meanings that we can make for ourselves, but not really addressing the arguments. That's what a debate is about. It's not about rhetoric. Maybe a political debate for president or something, but a really good academic debate, it's about the arguments. It's not about rhetoric and obfuscating what you're trying to say, and obscurantism and those sorts of things. Probably more that I should say that I'm forgetting at the moment. I'm almost out of time anyways. I think in conclusion I can say that on the Christian side there's 10 arguments. On the atheist side, the best that they could do